Hey y'all, this is Ethan Bonreal, waking up at 5 p.m. on a weekday to release all my homosexual energy that I've been storing up in my slumber. So this time around, we're going to go ahead and take the bros and have them really cut loose and engage in the other great gay pastime of murdering robots. Also, I'm going to talk about Grindr for a little bit because I saw a pretty interesting article on how Grindr makes people lonelier and how it can inadvertently make it harder to build connections with people, which is something I'm always interested in talking about. So, first things first, we do have these robots to deal with. I am post-commentating this episode because I actually got a little bit out of control with my recordings here. The reason for this is I accidentally tripped and fell and recorded like an hour of commentary. And I don't know how to explain this. The gay spirit of chaos basically took control of me, and I forgot that I need to be like doing video intros and stuff. And so I was like, I could go back and edit this to like make video intros, but looking back at the commentary, it's just not up to my personal standard. So I figured I'd just go ahead and post-commentate all this stuff. Sound good? Thumbs up. Woke. But anyway, like I said, it's 5 p.m. plus on a weekday, and I literally slept all day, in part because it's been raining really hard and the sun hasn't been out, but also in part because I keep streaming till like 4 or 5 a.m. So for y'all who are checking that out, that's actually woke as hell. I really appreciate that. And maybe I'll talk about this topic I'm going to talk about during the video in my stream too, but we'll see. In any case, so first things first with the Grindr thing, I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way for new folks or people who haven't heard me say this before. I really strongly believe a lot of gays have sex for reasons other than being horny, and in fact many of us pursue sexual content or sexual contact also as a way of dealing with feelings of loneliness or isolation. So the reason I say this is because I've observed it in myself and my friends, and I've observed it in people's testimonies. Well, I guess testimony is kind of a dramatic word. And the shit people say online, basically, like on Reddit and Tumblr, I think people tend to deflect this a lot by just assuming that, like, gays are men, and men are especially horny by nature, and I don't think that's remotely true, actually. I think it's more that we have a set of conditions that a lot of us live in that make it hard for us to make friends, and we deal with that by getting our social needs met through sex. And then also there's just a culture around it, right? Like, a lot of us, the only times we get to interact with other gay people are when we're hooking up, because it's not like we can just walk up to random people on the street and be like, hey, are you gay? Do you want to be BFF 60? But that's going to be part one of that conversation. We have this murdered a robot? This robot to murder, pardon me. I'm getting a little bit confabulated. So these things are pretty cool. We've killed one before, and they explode when they die, and the animation for that is actually pretty neat. But in regards to the story of this game, these are Magitek, I don't know what to call them, Magitek armors, there we go. And basically they're more advanced robots that run off of whatever magical powers the Empire uses. And part of the story is figuring out what the hell is actually powering them, because these are relatively new inventions on the battlefield. But they do explode truly miraculously, fitting for the kind of combat that we're getting into here. Also, you'll notice that Core is still with us, and he actually basically like one-shots a lot of these things, because he is almost 20 or 30 levels higher than us, but he's only going to be here for a little bit more. But part of the reason I even wanted to talk about this Grindr stuff was, looking at these nerds while you're playing the game and seeing how close they are, it's kind of a reminder that a lot of gay people don't really have that, basically. Like, we don't have, at least growing up, like a very close-knit group of friends who, like, we're really able to be very close to, that share an identity with us, basically. Like, decidedly, most of us don't have gay friends, And on top of that, if we do have gay friends, it doesn't happen until we're adults usually. That's not everyone. I've definitely met exceptions, and hell, I'm actually an exception to that because I met gay people when I was pretty young. But anyway, so it was making me think, even though this is like a really cool game with a lot of gay appeal in my opinion, because there's like this bonding, and I mean the guys are attractive. It's not a reflection of a lot of people's actual lives, and I think that might actually be why it's cool, is that people want to imagine themselves being friends with these characters or whatever. And just imagining the shit they do, like, I feel like they probably, I mean, they're probably not, like, making out, but they definitely spoon a little bit. I mean, it's hard for them not to. And you could really get a feel for that, too. They're just so close, and they're always, I mean, almost flirting with each other, right? They're always complimenting or just teasing each other, which is fun. Oh shit, another robot. So I'm gonna move on to part 2 of this discussion. And I already talked about how, like, it's hard to, or it's important to recognize that, like, gay people have sex for reasons other than being horny. And then on top of that, what I wanted to mention was that Grindr is kind of an exacerbator for this, ironically. So you would think because it makes people more accessible, like you can just find random people and try to meet up with them, that it would like solve this loneliness problem, or people would be able to make deeper connections with each other. But in reality, it works the opposite usually. And I say usually because there's just like a whole informal body of knowledge on that Grindr is just a very soul-sucking place for a lot of people. Unless you're very, very hot or you're conventionally attractive, it tends to be just very stressful, despite the fact that we have trouble not using it. So, the reason why I bring up it can make people lonelier is because I think there are two things it really comes down to. I think that Grindr inadvertently, or maybe intentionally, creates a situation where gay people have to compete with each other for sex. And I mean, it's not just Grindr that does that. I'll tell you 100%, like, from interacting with gay people in person. It's like that too. Either if you're just casually hanging out or if you're at a bar or something, it's definitely like that too. But Grindr makes it a little bit easier to do that because you can pick and choose people before you meet them, basically. While, like, at a club, someone always has a chance to make a good impression. And then also, like, you don't necessarily have to have sex with them if you meet them. But with Grindr, there's that expectation. And I know that not everyone, like, uses Grindr specifically for sex. And there are people who have made friends through Grindr. And I've made a few people who I talk to on the regular that are pretty cool. But, like, common sense and like just hearing what the gays have to say pretty consistently points to the fact that it is just very hard to functionally make friends on Grindr because people are basically like just sorting out people by their physical appearance. And this is related to something I've said in my previous videos. A lot of gay people struggle with making friends because we have trouble differentiating between friends and potential romantic and sexual partners. And what I mean by that is a lot of us don't want to be friends with people we are not physically attracted to because we want that friendship to potentially be a boyfriend or someone that we can have sex with. And I think that's very not useful for a lot of us, right? Because it just perpetuates the loneliness, and that's what I'm getting at. But on top of the competition aspect, it also creates a scenario where we basically kind of learn to think of each other primarily in sexual terms. And so, like, we'll look at someone and basically see them as a sexual partner, or, like, basically look at their physical attractiveness before we think of, I don't necessarily need to be physically attracted to this person if they're funny or a cool person with things that I have in common. And I mean, this is related to the thing I was just talking about before, but I'm just saying this for clarity's sake. I'm also going to address this. I know that, like, people do this offline too, and straight people also do it, right? But what I'm saying is that, like, the conditions that gay people live in, where it's very hard to meet other gay people, make this a little bit harder for us, right? that if you have to basically be on the internet specifically to try to meet other gay people, then you're already going through a hurdle that straight people normally wouldn't go through. And likewise, if you're online, I think that people tend to be a little bit more picky because they can afford to be, because there's so many people to pick and choose from. I also want to point out that the person who created Grindr actually takes pride in the fact that Grindr kind of pressures people to look a certain way and basically be muscular, TLDR, and that he takes pride on that, in that, and I kind of think that's a little bit, because again, it's like people don't exist to be sexually attractive to other people. Like, sure, that's an okay aesthetic for some people, but that shouldn't be what's gatekeeping you from finding friends, in my opinion. Anyway, we're done with that discussion for now. We'll talk more about it in the next video. And in the meantime, this is the entrance of the first dungeon of the game. And in this game, dungeons actually are not literal dungeons for the most part. They're actually ancient structures. So I mean, that's basically a dungeon, right? But it's just like a more modern take on the traditional view of an RPG dungeon. So right now we're in an abandoned mine/bunker area, and it's pretty spooky. But I'm going to go ahead and cut the video here in just a little bit. I want to say I appreciate y'all watching this, but in the meantime, and Ethan Bon Tween time, I'm gone.